Hi everyone, my name is Shin. I'm currently a senior UX designer at AWS and I have been working in the design industry for over 10 years. My background is both technical and creative. I hold degrees in computer science and design, which has allowed me to move fluidly between system thinking and user experience. Today, I want to share my personal experience on vibe coding learning strategy and why I believe designers must evolve beyond the interface and start thinking like builders. Vibe coding tools have evolved incredibly fast over the past 2 years. At the beginning, it was just a text box. You typed in natural language and received a code snippet in return. I remember constantly copying and pasting generated code across files just to build small prototypes. It helped me to solve some problem for my early prototypes, but realistically, this workflow was nearly impossible for someone without software development experience. It required understanding the project structure, dependencies, and debugging, skills that many designers were never trained in. Then IDE plugins emerged. Tools integrated directly into environments like VS Code allowed us to ask questions and generate code inside the development workflow. We no longer had to jump between multiple screens. At this stage, I started seeing more technical inclined designers learning software development fundamentals uh, by leveraging those plugins. Then came another big shift. Companies like Lovable, Figma, and Verso launched the low-code vibe coding platform, and they were viral almost instantly. The barrier to entry dropped dramatically. Non-engineering uh, folks could generate fully functional website without traditional coding knowledge. Suddenly, more and more designers around me were building and shipping vibe-coded concepts. But the evolution didn't stop there. IDE agents such as Cursor and Kira introduced a different par- scenario. These tools don't just suggest code, they plan, edit, and debug across entire code bases. Unlike early plugins, these agents feel fundamentally different. They remove much of the traditional IDE complexity and provide clear guidance. I see them less as tools for developers and more as tools for builders. They are trying to become increasingly accessible to non-engineering professionals, with some of those tools introduced in IDE, instant rendering of your code in code generated result. And now we have CLI agent, tools that aim to automate the development process almost end to end. This is currently my preferred category of tools. It is extremely efficient and powerful, but it also demands a different mindset. I have mentored multiple teams of designers on how to use each category of vibe coding tools, and the adoption results were very different. I will skip the early text-based tools at this point. I don't see anyone seriously using raw text boxes for vibe coding anymore. They were important historically, but they are no longer practical for real projects. Many of you might assume, as non-engineering professionals, designers would naturally gravitate towards UI generators, tools that allow you to produce polished interfaces without any software development knowledge. And yes, those platforms have the lowest barrier to enter. However, designers can designers, they can generate impressive visuals very quickly with those platforms. It feels empowering at first. However, after attending some of my workshops, something interesting happened. Once designers develop even a basic understanding of software development, what I call a builder mindset, many of them shifted toward IDE-based agents instead. Over time, IDE agents became the most widely adopted tool among the designers I work with, and their ability to wipe code grew significantly. Many designers initially used the low-code platforms for presentations and exploratory ideas, but they quickly hit a ceiling when trying to build more complex real-world projects. For example, when a designer needed to generate custom components aligned with an existing design system, the low-code tools often struggled. If the logic became sophisticated, authentication flows, dynamic data, reusable components, context would break down quickly. In contrast, IDE-based agents handle context much more effectively. They feel less like UI generators and more like engineering companions. They help install dependencies, they manage your changes, they document your decision, and they maintain a structure for you. One designer I worked with fit an entire product requirement document into an IDE agent. He worked with the agent to break the product requirement doc into tasks and define a structured execution plan. Then he allowed the agent to execute against that plan, reviewing and checking off tasks along the way. By the end, he had a robust end-to-end prototype with navigation properly connected, flows accurately represented, and micro-interactions aligned to the original requirements. He didn't manually wire everything together. The system logic emerged from structured planning. That's a builder thinking. I've also seen designers use IDE agents to extend their own design systems. The agent could pull in documentation from the existing design system, generate new components that respected the current constraints, and clearly document new states and usage guidelines. At this point, it's no longer just a prototype. It's become an operational artifact, something cross-functional teams can actually use. Some designers have even used IDE agents to create entirely new agents, include a voice agent. When designers use IDE agents, they feel more powerful. It's almost as if the tool expand their capabilities, shifting them from interface designers to system builders. Once the mindset shifts, the barrier doesn't feel as intimidating. On the other hand, traditional IDE plugins never achieved the same level of success in my mentoring experiences. They still operate with a very conventional development workflow. Designers must manage too much context manually. The cognitive load remains very high. As for CLI agents, I have introduced them pretty cautiously because they can be extremely powerful. Even I personally like to use them. They can also modify large portion of a code base very quickly. For designers who are still developing a builder literacy, that level of autonomy can feel overwhelming. Most designers are still in transition, and the tool is only as effective as the mindset behind it. Based on my mentoring and experience and my personal experimentations, I strongly believe designers need to shift away from AI tools that simply mimic traditional design workflows and towards more powerful tools that align with a builder mindset. The UX role, as we know it, will change significantly. In fact, the boundary between designer and engineers may eventually disappear. We will all become builders. AI has dramatically lowered the learning curve of those builder tools. What used to take years to master can now be accelerated through guided interaction with an agent, and there are clear advantages. First, agents do now distinguish between front end and back end. They generate both together and understand how they connect. If prompted correctly, modern LLMs can even explain the reasoning behind all their architecture decisions. So the capacity is already there. Why shouldn't we embrace it then as designers that are becoming builders? Second, live coding forces stronger systems thinking. When building with agents, you are constantly asked, how does the interaction connect? What does the data model look like? How should this integrate with existing systems? What are the edge cases? What are the different states of the interactions? All those questions that you were challenged by the AI agents will make your decisions more robust. You are no longer designing static interfaces, you are designing behavior within a system. Third, builder workflows naturally create structured documentation. Your decisions are recorded, your logic is traceable, your success can be replicated and scaled. The more you work with agents, the more reusable your thinking becomes. Finally, we need to rethink what we're actually designing. As designers, we have become comfortable creating interactions on a screen, but fundamentally, we design human-computer interaction. That interaction doesn't have to be limited to browser interfaces. With Agent, I have personally built voice AI experiences, Chrome extensions, and other tools beyond traditional AI, UUI. I have friends who have built extensions for Google Slide and internal productivity tools. We are no longer limited to design screens. We can design tools that shape how people work every day. That's much a bigger opportunity. If designers are going to shift toward a builder mindset, there are a few foundational elements designers will need to learn. First, version control. You need to understand basic branching, merging, and change management. Vibe coding moves very fast. Agents can generate large amounts of code quickly. Without version control literacy, you will lose track of what changed and why. Second, basic security awareness. You must understand what you're installing. This is manageable on a personal project, but in a company environment, it becomes critical. So do collaborate with your engineering team, understand your organization's security guidelines. Third, structured planning. Models know too much rather than too little. If you don't provide constraints and context, they will make assumptions. Builder thinking means writing specs, defining tasks, and clarifying requirements before execution. AI amplifies clarity, but it also amplifies ambiguity. Fourth, collaboration strategy. You need a simple framework to share prototype and code with your team. Personally, I use GitHub for versioning and deploy to Netlify when I need to share a working demo. As we still need human feedback, we still need critiques, we still need that collaboration for complex project. AI does not replace all of them. These skills may sound intimidating, but there's the good news. You can ask your agent to teach you instead of manually figuring out version control commands or security setup. You can nurse through guided interactions. You can just ask the agent about these four topics. If you haven't tried an IDE-based agent yet, I encourage you to start. Once you combine a builder mindset with the right tool, you don't just design faster, you operate at a different level.